Go ahead. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for Structure and Clear Limits this morning. We are joined here in good hands today with Ms. Siobhan Dotson. So we are grateful for her to be here. Thank you all for joining us. Just one quick announcement. If you all could please put your name and the organization that you are representing in the chat, please. Your name and the organization that you are with. And then we also have the what we call our listening campaign that we had back in the summer. And so we will have those results actually 2 weeks from now on February 17th, okay? And so I'm going to post that in the chat. And so there is a link in the chat to where you can register for that. So if anybody who is involved with youth work, anybody who is in the Louisville area, this will be pertinent to you because we went and we had listening sessions and one-on-one sessions and group sessions with council members, with community members, and some of you all were a part of that. And so you can use this information to inform your work going forward, okay? So I will post that again because I know the chat is moving very fast with everyone putting their name in their organization in there. So yeah, please be sure to register and attend that. Even if you can't stay the entire time, just make sure that you're there and we can send you the recording for that information. All right. So without further ado, I will go ahead and put it into the hands of Ms. Siobhan Dotson. Thank you all for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, and welcome. Happy Wednesday. I always have to think about what day it is. Happy Wednesday. So let me just see. Let me scroll on up before I introduce myself. Let me see who we have here. So we have Walter. Good morning, Walter. Good morning, Aaron. Good morning, Mariah. Good morning, Liz. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, Whitney. Good morning, Lavon. Good morning, Kat. Good morning, John. Good morning, Tish. All right, awesome. Continue to go ahead and as people join, pop your name and the organization that you are representing in the chat here with us. Hello, my name is Siobhan Dotson. I'm going to be your facilitator today as we are talking about structure and clear limits. I'm excited to be here with you all today. Now, here's what I will tell you. I always like to give disclaimers when I start my trainings. This training, right? This facilitation, it's for you. So this is really meant to be engaging. This is meant to, strike up conversation. So that's exactly what I want to happen here. This is not going to be you all just coming on, listen to me talk for 2 hours. Who wants to hear that, right? Nobody, probably. So this is meant for us to engage in healthy, positive conversation, but I also want you all to know this is also an opportunity to vent. If you're just like, listen, we talk about structure, we talk about limits, let me tell you what has just not been working or what I am frustrated with. This is also a time to talk about those things as well, because we have a lot of talent, a lot of skill, a lot of expertise in the room. So someone might be able to offer you a nugget or a resource, or just to like, oh, I feel you on that. Right here in this space. This is a safe space. So we're going to have a great time today, this morning, as we pop into our workshop materials around structure and clear limits. We will be together until about noon-ish. So just give you an idea of how long we'll be here talking about this topic. Okay, so I am going to share my screen so that you all can see. Now, when I do this, and I'm going to maximize this. Okay, when I do it like this, I need to be able to see these. I don't like doing it in presentation format because then I lose all of my links and all the things. So we are going to, hopefully this is sufficient enough for you to be able to see. All right, structure and clear limits. Here's our agenda for this morning. We're going to talk about structure and clear limits, the what and the why and all of those things. We are going to talk about focusing on the needs of our youth, what that looks like in your programming, how you've been able to maybe identify those things, or even some things you might be struggling with. We're going to talk about how structure and clear limits look in your program. I want to hear how you all implement this. What's working? What are some best practices? What have you found that's just like, we tried it and it is not for us. I want to hear all the things. Then we are going to do a reflection and we are going to close it out. Here are our workshop objectives. Participants will understand how structure and clear limits meet the developmental needs of youth. Participants will have the opportunity to explore ways to improve their program's structure. Participants will have the opportunity to establish limits for their program. So that is just a quick look at our agenda and some of our objectives today. Before I go any further, I do want to take an opportunity just to tell you a little bit about who I am. Some of you may or may not have ever taken a training with me, so I will take an opportunity just to briefly introduce myself. So as I stated, I am Siobhan Dotson. I have been a facilitator and trainer for the last several years now. I want to say I really kind of stepped into this more on a full-time basis. It's been about 4 years now. I've done this a little bit more full time, focusing on professional development in the youth development industry, right? But I have been working in youth development this is my 20th year. It does not feel like it's been that long, but this is my 20th year working in this field. Working in youth development was my first job when I was in college. When I entered college, I was an after school tutor and an administrative assistant for a program on my college campus. We were tutoring middle school students. And I was just like, first of all, I need a job. So like whatever I can do that fit in my schedule, throw me in there. And when I started working, I started out being just the administrative assistant. Then I went into like more of tutoring. And honestly, you all, I just never left this field. I found that I have an affinity, a passion, and a love for working with young people. And I have been in this field ever since. I have held so many positions in this field. I've been a volunteer. I've been a tutor. I've done the front desk. I've done facility work. I've done grants work. I've done management work. I'm doing training work, right? I've been out going door to door trying to recruit people. I have done a lot of the things. And so I say that to say, I do understand some of the highs and lows of working in this work. I was doing a training yesterday and talking to some grant recipients of a grant that we're working on in a different state. And I had to let them know, I was like, listen, I get it. What you said you were going to do versus what you're actually doing are not the same thing, right? Like I totally understand you had this beautiful proposal, we idealize so many things. And then when we get started, we're like, that's definitely not how that's working out. Plus, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So we are still dealing with all things pandemic related, virtual, hybrid, in person, classrooms shutting down, whole programs got to stop. Then they start working with schools and you can't work with school. I totally understand. And I really want to make space for us to highlight and talk about some of those challenges during our time today, because for me, even going into what we know is year 3 of being in this pandemic, we are still making a lot of pivots to the work that we're doing. I think in the beginning, we all had high hopes that we're going to get back into the classroom full time and things are going to go back to normal. And if you're like me, now you're like, listen, y'all, I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm just day to day. I don't know. I'm going to do whatever they tell me. One day we might be virtual. I don't know. Next day we in person. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to plan things accordingly, to kind of really map out how you want your program to go, because there's so many unknowns. So we can talk about that today, again, as we're talking about creating structure and creating limits, around our programs. So again, that's just a little bit about me. I'm also a mom. I have 2 children. I have an 18-year-old who is in her last year of high school, and she's also finishing up an associate's degree, and she is gearing up to go to, a whole university in a few months. So, we are at that point. And then I have a 1-year-old who I hear upstairs banging on the ground as I speak. So if you hear screams in the background, do not fret, nothing is wrong. That is just my 1-year-old letting me know he is here, and he is very vocal, and he just, is using his voice to let me know he wants to be heard. So I just like to always give that disclaimer that you might hear some screams in the background, but no one is being harmed. It's just my son letting me know that he is around. A little housekeeping. There aren't going to be any materials, not for this particular session, but usually when I have materials, I'll share them during the presentation. You should be where you know your own bathroom location is. But I say that to say, take time to, like, anytime you need to hop off camera, do what you have to do, take care of yourself. The biggest thing is the self care. If you're hungry, eat. If you're thirsty, drink. Right? If you need to walk away, walk away. But the one thing I will ask for people to do, I do challenge all of my participants to engage as much as possible. And also, I challenge you to minimize all of your distractions. So if you can be fully present in this moment for these 2 hours that we're together, I do challenge you to do that. And if emails can be on hold for 2 hours, I challenge you to try to hold off on them, because it's important that we try to get into the space, even when we're working virtually or we're attending these things, for us to try to be as present as possible. Because I know how easy it can be to be on a training, sending 5 emails and answering the phone because you're just like, oh, these people had to call me. And that, sometimes you're just like, wait, I do want to try to be here. So I even challenge myself. I don't have any other screens up. I am here fully present with you this morning. And I'm excited about us jumping into our content. Now, I'm going to stop share for 1 second because I do want to do a check-in. I always like to check in with everybody. I like to do a mental health check-in, get a pulse of how you're feeling this morning. So this is really important to me because if you are just like, Siobhan, I'm here, but I'm really not in a space to participate, I am going to honor that. I want to know that because I don't want to push you outside of what you are able to give today. So I'm going to ask you to type one of 3 numbers in the chat for me. That is going to be how we check in, and it's going to be how I know kind of how you're feeling and honestly what your level of participation is going to be this morning. All right, so in the chat, you are either going to type a 1, a 3, or a 5. You're going to type a 1 if you're just like, I'm really not feeling it today. Maybe I don't feel well. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe I'm just not in the mood. Like, I'm here, Siobhan, but don't expect me to participate because I don't have the energy for it. That is a 1. That is perfectly acceptable. No judgment. I see you. I hear you. That is fine. You're a 3 if you're just like, sis, I'm still waking up, right? Or I still have a lot to do. Right? And I'm here, but like I might be multitasking. So I might tap in, I might tap out, Siobhan. That's gonna be a 3. Again, totally fine, totally acceptable. You're a 5 if you're just like, I'm here, I'm fully present, I'm ready to engage, I'm really excited about this content. I want to get to have this conversation. Like, let's go. So let me know, are you a 1, a 3, or 5, or are you somewhere in between? All answers are fully acceptable. All righty. So I just see some numbers coming in. Thank you all for letting me know how you're feeling today. I see some 3s. I do see a 1. That is totally fine. And I will honor where you are. I see a 5. Thank you, Antonio. I see a 4. I hear it. Okay. I see a lot of 3s. Listen, all of that is perfectly acceptable. I see some 5s. Okay. All right. So thank you for letting me know. That's very helpful for me because one thing that I've learned in this virtual space, it is very hard to try to engage people when everybody's at a 1. And it's like, oh, okay, y'all don't want to talk, right? And so I like to honor people and be like, that's cool. If you just want to hear me talk for 2 hours, that's fine too. But I do see some 3s, 3.5s, right? Some 5s. So that lets me know we're gonna have a pretty good session today, and we'll get some engaging discussion. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Again, I love to do a post check just to kind of see where your energy is at. I do this with young people all the time. I do this with adults. I think it's really important for me to highlight to people, I am willing to meet you wherever you are, right? I understand that things happen. I also understand that it is still the morning time, right? And some of us, myself included, are still waking up. So I will tell you that I am a 5 right now, and which is amazing because I definitely did not get a lot of sleep last night. That's okay, but I woke up, I did my morning routine. So I'm a 5 right now. So I'm going to give you all of my 5 energy. But I want to ensure to you that I'm not always a 5 on training. I actually had to do a training one time while I was recovering from COVID. And I had to right, exactly. I was like, y'all, I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm barely pushing a 3, maybe a 2. But I showed up and I was just very transparent with people. So I say that to say Siobhan is not always a 5, but you getting 5 energy today. So we are going to rock and roll with it. I am going to go back and share my screen here. All right, so here is our pyramid for program quality. Go ahead and type into the chat for me, yes or no. Have you ever seen this pyramid? Do you know what this pyramid is? Type into the chat for me, yes or no. Okay, perfect. I see some yeses coming in. Great. So some of you are familiar with this pyramid, some of you are not. I'm going to explain to you what this pyramid is. This is our pyramid for program quality, right? This is developed from the Weichert Center. This is also developed from the Program Quality Assessment Tool, the PQA. So we have these different buckets and we say, hey, when all of these things happen in these different categories, we know quality program can happen. So first and foremost, we want to say we have youth voice in governance, like in all the things. Youth voice should be included. They should be on your council. If you have like some type of council, a board, they should be giving you feedback throughout your program. So we should see youth voice in all of these different aspects. And then also a professional learning community. That's what you all are right here. That is really important when we talk about program quality because we learn from each other. So that's kind of like, yes, that should always be present. Then we have this bucket right here, safe environment. We know quality program happens when we can create a safe environment, both emotionally, psychologically, physically safe, have emergency procedures, appropriate space and furniture, healthy food and drinks. All of that is encompassed in safe environment. Our workshop today is housed in the safe environment domain, where we're really going to be harping on emotional safety, psychological safety, and physically safe environments. Then you have supportive environment. These things happen when these things happen here: encouragement, skill building, active engagement. You know that you can create a supportive environment for programming. When these things happen here, you know you are creating a positive environment for maximum peer interaction to happen. And then when these things at the top of the pyramid happen here, you are creating an environment where maximum youth engagement can happen. All of these things, if you're having all of these things happen in your program, then you know you have a quality program. So that is what this pyramid represents. For those of you who were just like, I don't know what that pyramid is, you will always see this pyramid reference in any Weichert youth method workshop, because that is the basis for which all of their workshops are created. Okay, so here we are here. I am going to drop a link in the chat, and it's going to take you to a poll, a Slido poll, and it's going to pull up some multiple choice options for you. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose the phrase that will complete this sentence. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because, and I'm going to share my screen as we look at these options here, right? Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because, and I'll be able to see your results as they come in, right? So here are some of our options. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because they give me a headache when they are loud. If you feel that is, relevant, go ahead and click that answer. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because if everyone's talking, I can't hear who is supposed to be talking. If that's what you feel is, a good answer, go ahead and answer. Again, this is no judgment. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because some youth might feel unsafe or uncomfortable if it's too loud. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because learning to take turns and listen is an important life skill. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because they need to learn to do what they're told so they can grow up to be followers. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because I said so. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because the youth who want to participate can't when it's too loud. And then kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because chaos is, well, a little chaotic. All right, so I see some results coming in. We have a lot of people selecting learning to take turns and listen is an important life skill. We have some people saying youth might feel unsafe or uncomfortable. We have some saying youth who want to participate can't when it's too loud. All right, so go ahead and I'll give you about another minute. Feel free to select the ones that you feel are most relevant to you. And I'm gonna be honest with you all. Again, I've been doing this work for 20 years and I have not always been the most informed youth development professional. So there were definitely times where I said kids need to be quiet and listen when I asked them to, because I said so. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be very transparent. I have definitely thought that at one point in my career. I have definitely thought that chaos is, well, a little chaotic. So yeah, y'all need to be quiet so don't get too out of hand. I've said that one as well. All right, so I'll give you maybe another 20 seconds or so. Go ahead and fill out the poll here, and then we're gonna talk about it. All righty. Let's see. Here we go. Mariah says, seems like there are multiple correct answers. Hey, you can choose as, yeah, many answers as you like. This is pretty relevant to me. All right, so let's have a discussion. And at any point, you all can feel free to type into the chat if you want to share. You can feel free to unmute yourself and talk if you want to share. Or if you're just like, Siobhan, I don't have any words to share, you can always choose the reactions button, a little emoji, to kind of let us know, like, I feel you, I'm here with you, I agree, I disagree, whatever. So you can communicate and give us feedback that way as well. So you can talk, you can type, or you can select an emoji. Okay, let us take a look at this. Kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because, so a lot of you said learning to take turns and listen is an important life skill. Awesome. Anyone who selected that, feel free. I would love to hear. Go ahead and unmute yourself and give me maybe about 20 to 30 seconds of your reasoning behind selecting learning to take turns and listen is an important life skill.
Well, I'm not afraid to go first. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm a social worker by profession, and I work with youth and adults. But it's an important skill to listen to what everyone has to say. My program is dedicated to fostering personal growth, accountability, and responsibility. And a term that we use in social work is soft skills is decision making. So in order to make all the decisions, you have to be able to listen. And something that I facilitated in the past, and I still state now, in order to, especially with youth, it's important and try to instill in them the importance of learning from one another, because everyone's experience is different. Awesome. And to get them to understand that they're not the only one who are experiencing challenges in life right now, as they're going through the transition.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really important point, right? To say it's important for them to know you may not be the only person going through that, right? It's other people might be experiencing the same thing. And I will say, I've had to run into that with my 18-year-old, right? So it's always like, I'm the only person ever going through this. It's like, no, actually you're not. If you listen to what other people are saying, you might find that they are also going through a similar experience. And I wonder how many of you all have dealt with this, especially how we feel or how people have felt during the pandemic. I feel like a lot of the youth that I have worked with or that I've heard from, they feel like it's just them struggling mentally or socially, right? They feel like, well, oh, this is so hard for me. No one understands. It's hard not to be able to go and see my friends or be able to go to school every day. And it's just like, well, if you listen, I can share with you, or you can hear other people say, man, you are not the only person struggling. So I have heard that constantly, right, from some of the young people around me about how it feels to be going through this pandemic. And it's been important to say, let's normalize this for you to know you're not the only person. Other people are also feeling the same way. So thank you for sharing your take on that, your perspective on that. Amazing. All right, so we have some other answers here. Some people selected kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because some youth might feel unsafe or uncomfortable if it's too loud. If you feel comfortable, right? If you selected that and you would love to share, I would love for someone to unmute themselves and share your, about 20 or 30 seconds of your thought process behind selecting that statement.
So I picked that statement because I work with a lot of kids with disabilities, and the sounds can be really overwhelming for some of them. So it's important to have a safe place and be like, all right, I know you guys don't understand how loud you are, but let's be mindful of where we're at so that way we don't cause any issues.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a really great point. Sometimes I feel like we might not be aware of the sounds and a lot of noise and the impact that can have just on our peers or others around us. So that's a really great point. I will say, when I was reading these, that one popped into my head now. It never would have popped into my head like 10 years ago as a professional, because I feel like I was just unaware. I wasn't even thinking about the different populations that we work with. So thank you so much for highlighting that, to say, hey, there are some populations of students where when it's too loud, that's very uncomfortable for them. It might cause them to shut down. Such a good point. I noticed that even with my 1-year-old, listen, when he does something and I'm excited, I'm like, yay! Oh my goodness, you did. And he looks like he wants to cry. So I have to be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, thank you. You did a good. He doesn't like loud noises. When it's too loud, he will shut down. He will cry. He's looking like, why are you so loud? And we get around here, we're like, yay. So I have also been like, Siobhan, be very aware of the volume at which you are speaking. And he'll do something, and my oldest daughter, she gets excited and he's looking like, so we're just like, no, yay, you did a good job. So thank you so much for highlighting that, because that is important. It might be uncomfortable, and sometimes for me, when I think about it, I don't even necessarily have to attach it to a student with a disability. At this point now, I'm also realizing there's a lot of trauma. A lot of the youth that I work with have a lot of trauma. So as an adult, thanks to lots of great therapy, I also had to realize some of my own childhood traumas, the way that they show up. My anxiety peaks when it's too loud. When I'm in an unfamiliar environment and something becomes too loud, I start, like, my anxiety will go up, and my body has its own trauma response, and I'll kind of freeze. And I think my body is just like, are we about to run? Right? What are we going to do? So I also think about some of our young people who deal with some violence or some traumas like that, to where if it gets too loud, they can feel out of control or out of place and might get uncomfortable and shut down. This is great discussion. All right. And so then we also had some people choose youth, kids need to be quiet and listen when I ask them to, because the youth who want to participate can't when it's too loud. If you feel comfortable, please feel free to unmute yourself and give us a little bit of background about why you selected that one.
I think I might have been that 7%, but I work with Kentucky Refugee Ministries, and I just started about a month ago. But prior to this, I worked in a public library, and I taught composition while I was doing my master's degree. And for me, a lot of the time, students would need time to process what was said. And I would work pretty often with ESL students. So either complex questions for even native speakers, or ESL students who just need longer to process. Sometimes there's people in the class who love to jump in right away. And I'm one of those people, and I admit it. But I think that having them, be able to tone it down for a little while to let other people process and contribute, especially if they're shy, especially if they need time to process English, if that's what their issue is kind of the way I thought about it at first. And I think that's what fits with my role here too, quite a bit. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
And that feedback, because that's important. That is important to consider, right? When you talk about processing times for our young people, really being aware of those things and how they process, and like you talked about, some of our English language learners, right? They're learning a new language, and thank you for saying, hey, I am one of those people that will hop in. So because I feel like I've been guilty of that sometimes too, to be so eager to hop in. At least when I was younger, I felt like I was more of an extrovert then. I'm more of an introvert now. So that is important, giving others an opportunity to process before responding. So, and we're going to talk about how all of these things relate to structure and clear limit. Meg, I'm sorry, I think you had your hand raised. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, I work at a theater center, and so we're typically used to being the students who are really loud and outgoing. But in the last 10 years, we have seen this shift of students who do have more sensory issues that, it's always been something that's been around, and we're just now starting to be like, this is something we need to acknowledge and see as well. So like you said, sometimes I come in and I'm like an 11 and I see their eyes get huge and I'm like, oh, bring it down, because that came in a little too loud for them. And another thing is just this past, the pandemic, the people not noticing like how loud life was until we spent time in our own houses. And so adjusting to coming back to that, I'm realizing that a lot of things are much louder now.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. That is interesting. And I'm glad you shared with us how you have even had to pivot. I used to be a theater major when I was in high school, and then I also did it in undergrad as well. And you're right, like theater is definitely very high energy. And I feel like that was kind of the consensus of anybody participating in theater. So thank you for that awareness to say you all have seen that shift, even in, an area where people are known to have, maybe a little bit more energy, because sometimes that's the expectation, or just, be a little bit louder. So thank you for sharing even that awareness to say, well, I've had to tone it down, or I've noticed some of these shifts, because that's a really great point to think about how we're going back into physical spaces now after being home for so long. So our sensitivities may be changing, or our awareness of certain things may be changing. I feel like I'm realizing how much we were just dealing with and going along with before the pandemic. And now that we're in this pandemic, have been going through it and been in our own individual spaces, and now going back into physical spaces with other people, I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, like maybe that wasn't so normal for me to just be sitting next to 6,000 people in this small office. Maybe we never should have been sitting that close together from just different things. So thank you for highlighting, like, okay, I'm becoming a little bit more aware of things now. Awesome. Interesting. So thank you all for sharing that with me. It is, always interesting to hear people's perspectives. And again, from the seat that you sit in, because we all might work with different populations of students or work with them in different ways. So the way we approach this work can be different. So I see Kenya typed here, I feel that there are no incorrect answers, maybe despite the last two. I think those are inappropriate when working with children. All right. So right, there are some of the answers we see here, like, listen, because the I said so. That is definitely like, oh, that is more authoritative and I'm right, you're wrong type of answer. And we know from seeing it, maybe from doing it, because I've definitely done it, that's definitely not going to get you far with the young people. And then also, you know, and some people don't like chaos. Some people are turned off by chaos. There's the answer, they give me a headache when they're too loud, right? Don't, y'all too loud. Well, if you're working in a youth space, I would hope that you anticipate some level of noise or of, you know, of loudness. So, but I'll tell you, I also do external assessments for organizations, and I still have seen the I said so's. I still have seen it's too loud because I haven't had, like, I still see a lot of those instances, you know, happening in programming where it's just like, okay, let's talk about how maybe we need to work to create a little bit more emotional safety for our young people. Because when we're talking about structure and clear limits, and you all feel free to chime in, what do you think, how do you think our young people respond to the you all are too loud, you're giving me a headache? How do you all think that they might respond when a staff would say something like that or would go in with that type of energy?
Kind of sets the atmosphere and the environment for power struggles, you know. So that's like one of the main ingredients, because I said so. So now you got adults against the will of the adults against the will of the kids, and it's just that now you got a power struggle that you got to go through.
I think also it kind of sends the message to the kids that maybe you don't really want to be there. And that's something that is like really important. I feel like what we always try to do is like make sure that like the kids know that like we're also having fun and like we want to spend time with them. And that's, I feel like that sends the headache thing sends a little bit of a different message. You can say that in a different way.
Yes, yes. And then Aaron wrote shame and embarrassment. These are all amazing answers. And I wholeheartedly agree. Antonio talked about that power struggle, unnecessary power struggle, right? Like, who's in charge? I'm in charge. You know, it doesn't help us create a positive environment. And remember, we're talking about creating emotional safety, psychological safety. Rachel talked about, you know, that as well. So we really want to make sure we're creating safe spaces. And we know people have a tendency to shut down. I know I'm grown. And if somebody tells me I'm doing something and it's having like this negative effect on them, I'm immediately going to go from a 5 to a 1, maybe even a 0 and tap out, right? Like you'll see it in my body language will change, my facial expressions will change, my energy will change. And I could just about imagine our young people when they come in so excited, and then you're just like, shut that down. I got a headache. They like, oh, right. And like you said, Rachel, then they start feeling like you don't even want to be there. And they're like, well, if you don't want to be there, here it is. If you don't want to be there, then I don't want to be here. Then what we both here for? Right. And then again, Antonio, we see the power struggles. And like Aaron stated, the shame, the embarrassment, and shame is something that I think unintentionally sometimes and unconsciously people have a tendency to put onto our young people so often with some of the language that we use. Again, it can be unintentional. Sometimes we can just do it unconsciously out of just habit of saying things. But then our young people are ashamed, right? Like they're embarrassed. They're like, oh no, everybody's looking at me, right? You brought all of this attention, or then they don't ever want to share. Then they don't ever want to come in and embrace you. So thank you all for highlighting those things as well. I'm going to share.
I had a thought around that too.
Go ahead.
Just that at first I was going to say, you know, if you talk about the headache thing, it's like centering the adults' needs over the kids' needs. But then I sort of realized, like, if you do have a headache, it can be an opportunity to kind of talk to them. But instead of a like us versus them, like me versus the kids, you're causing my headache, it can be like, we are all in this together and I want to let you know where I'm at and what my needs are. And I'm going to ask for your support, and we can all kind of like support me having a headache. You know, it can be, instead of like, you're causing this, it can be an opportunity to say like what you're feeling, you know, and identify like, oh, I'm feeling physically uncomfortable. Maybe I need to drink some more water. And I'm also going to ask if you all can try and limit your noise, to kind of like model paying attention to your physical needs.
I love that. I really do. I think that's such a good point. And I feel like that along the lines of that thought process, it can normalize us and humanize us a little bit more to our young people, right? Sometimes I think we give off this belief to our young people, like we are superhuman and, we know everything and we're always in a great mood. And sometimes I think young people love to hear, you're not feeling well today either. But like you said, hey, I'm still here. And let's talk about it, because I think that'll open the door for them to come in and say, hey, you know what? I'm not having the best day today, right? I need my classmates' support. And like, how can I get through this not so great day? And I think that's just community building in and of itself, and creating that emotional safety for our young people to come and express themselves to us. Because the truth is, we have a lot of young people who come in programming and they don't feel well, but maybe they don't feel safe to express that. So they just act it out. Maybe they acted out in ways where they're throwing chairs and screaming and, shutting down. So I love that thought process. And that's a takeaway for me. So the key takeaway, thank you. I'm taking that away and putting that in my little toolbox to say, hey, next time I'm in a space, with young people, to just, like you said, open it up, have a discussion, normalize it. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so what is structure and clear limits? Structure is, here it is right here, the framework for a program and the offerings within it that sets the stage for activities and youth engagement. So we know structure is like your schedules, your staffing, your routines, even structure around your program space, how you physically have the space set up. Is there a space specifically for homework? Do we transition then to another space for enrichment, right? Like, structuring your physical space, structuring your day. They have here staffing. Do you have a structure for how staff engage with the young people, or routines around which staff will do what? I know when I was in elementary school, is just like you had a music teacher, you had a PE teacher. Like, there was not one teacher doing everything. I knew when it was music time, this particular teacher was coming to teach music. So that's actually also structure and consistency, because we know young people look forward to that. And when the music teacher didn't come, I was like, wait a minute, where's she at? Right? Because I'm totally bought into who that person is, and this particular person teaching me music. And then we have here clear limits, boundaries, establish boundaries set up and reinforced by an adult, youth, or a partnership. I am definitely a believer of the partnership between the two. And we're going to talk about some ways in which that might happen in your program, or some things that you might want to see happen. So I love to just take a moment here and find out a little bit more about structure. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it into the chat. What does structure currently look like in your program?
In talking about space, I'm glad you brought that up, because like part of the reason I wanted to attend this training is because I do think that our program could include some better structure. But one of our issues is that our space is tiny, and we have one space for all of the things that we do. And we rearrange the space sometimes to meet the students' needs. Not that that can be solved on this Zoom call, but it is interesting to think about. And I wonder if there's a way we could still improve that, because I do think that's like one of our bigger issues around structure.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Rachel. Just, thinking around and maybe problem solving around how to structure the physical environment a little bit more, so that it makes more sense. Especially when you're like, hey, we have limited space, so we're trying to do maybe all the things in a smaller space, but we want to create some more structure because you think that might aid in the program. And anyone else, feel free to jump in if you all have dealt with this challenge as well, and might have some thoughts, some recommendations as well. So improving the physical structure. Anyone else want to share what does structure look like in your program?
I'll share. So I some of you know me from working children's services at Iroquois Library. Now I am at the Highlands Library and I work with teens, which I've wanted to do all along. I'm in the Outpost, which also is kind of a small space. I was curious what types of programs you all did and like about how big your space was, because we have a really small space too, but I mean, we're a library. We don't do like, you know, PE type activities or things like that. So I was just kind of curious if there was maybe something, you know, we had in common that we could problem solve on. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're a community art center in the Smoketown neighborhood, and we actually there was like an abandoned liquor store that we turned into our space. And so it's kind of just like one long skinny room with like a little back room. But we also do a lot of screen printing. So we it's like organized so that part of it is like the classroom space and part of it is kind of like the screen printing shop. And I just feel like we spend a lot of time like rearranging how that space is, because I mean, we have classes every day after school, and depending on the age of the students and how many there are and what art activity we're doing, it just feels really wild. I don't know. Do you guys rearrange your space a lot?
I was rearranging it because I came in August and there was a different setup. We have like two of those teacher work tables that are shaped like, I don't know, the Star Trek insignia kind of. They're like kind of triangular round. We have a couple of those, and we have like a couch and two like little one person little like love seat things. And I've moved it around, and what I've kind of gone for is like having stations. So we have like a video game station in the back where they can play video games, and there's like an art station that's on the side. So I've been gradually like moving more and more supplies out of like our storage closets to be like in that space. And um we used to have like we still have a puzzle table, but I've moved the puzzle table like closer to the door because nobody was using it. And then like now that it's like right by the front door, when teens come in, like they just go there and start talking and working the puzzle. So yeah, I think like it sounds like you have stations already kind of, but maybe like embracing that idea a little more. And if you could create any type of like physical boundaries for those stations, that might help organize it too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, yeah, we will, like right now we're working on like a stop motion video project, and so we'll set up like additional tables even in the screen printing area or like the kitchenette space so that kids will have like space to work. It's such a small space. It's like,
yeah,
it's hard. But yeah, that's a good idea.
Awesome. I love this discussion. And I see Antonio typed in stations are a tried and true strategy. I wholeheartedly agree. Right. Especially when you're working with limited space, having those stations, or even if you're talking about physical space, right? Creating stations in boxes, right? So maybe you can't change your physical space all the time, but if you know, like, all right, this is our arts and crafts box or our t-shirt printing box, when we have to go to that, like literally just grabbing the supplies and going to the designated space that you need can maybe help cut down on some of the chaos. Because sometimes you have to move things around. You gotta, maybe it's not the same space we used yesterday, but one thing I've done in programming is just like I started putting things in like those storage boxes, and I see somebody put like library carts, exactly, something where you can easily move your materials from one space to the next, but everything is all set together. And they know, like, because that's something that hey, young people, all right, go set it up. You set it up, you take it down, and you push it to the side, right? Because I've worked in spaces where we literally have to set our space up every day because we share a space. So we needed something like you set it up, you take it down, you set it up, you take it down. And that became a part of our routine and the responsibilities. So we had designated youth, like, you are responsible for setting the stations up on these days, you're responsible for cleaning up. So that could be, right, like a leadership opportunity, a fun game. So I love all of these ideas. And I love, library cards, anything with wheels, always amazing. So thank you all for sharing those ideas, and we're going to keep this discussion moving right along. And I think we've already kind of touched on this, like why structure and clear limits matter, right, for building a productive community, because they lead to a safe environment. It definitely is, it has productive use of time. It also can let young people want to know, like, they want to know what I can do, what I can't do, like what's acceptable. Structure can actually be liberating. And even if safety can't fully be established at home, structure and programs, it allows them to experience high levels of like engagement because they feel safe. They feel emotionally safe. They feel psychologically safe. They know what to expect. So it allows for them to tap into some of those higher levels of engagement and really participate in a different way. And then number 6, research shows that structure is connected to all sorts of positive outcomes. And it may even be a necessary prerequisite. So structures, routines, what, knowing how to set the space up, knowing what to expect when they come in. So let's talk about how we build a structure. Here we go right here, those routines. Establishing routines. They need to know what every day will look like. So some of the things that you all have that are just every day you come in, our young people know we do this. We start our day with this, right? We start our day with snack or whatever. They know that program schedule front to back. And Kenya says, I strongly agree with like prerequisite, making sure structure is a part of the prerequisite. So thinking about those routines that you all have. I tell you one thing I learned along the way, when your routine and your schedule is so down pat, anytime that you are not following the routine as the grown-up, baby, them young people will call you out on it and be like, Mr. Antonio, we supposed to be doing arts and crafts right now. You told us, like, right? Like they come to expect it and they will hold you to the fire. If you say snack is the first thing and you try to put snack as the last thing, they gonna tell you about yourself, because that's what makes them feel safe. They're safe with that schedule. They know exactly what to expect and they know how to participate. Because you might have some young people to say, I know which parts of this program I'm participating in, which parts I know I'm not participating in. And that's comfortable for them to say, yes, I'm a participate in snack. No, I'm not participating in homework. But when we pick up at the enrichment piece, I will participate in the games. So, they might know those things and that might be comfortable for them. Meg says, we start each class with a question of the day that gives them time to get settled in while also learning about their peers. And they definitely call us out if we forget. Absolutely. I love it. A question of the day, right? And I'm sure, Meg, that you all probably make it fun and even, maybe sometimes let them create the questions of the day, or maybe they're looking forward to like, what's the question going to be today? So there's so many fun things that you can create around having those routines. That consistency.
I'm gonna make a quick comment. So when it comes to the routines, we talk about the program schedules and the daily things that you all do. Always keep in mind energy levels whenever you plan your routines, because if you have an after-school program, normally after school is when they have high energy levels. And so when they come to your program, it's not the best practices, to have them to have to sit and focus on something, as soon as they get out of school. So a lot of times, when they first get to your program, that's a good time to let out energy, run and play and things like that, and then get into more of the structured activities, because with the structure of your program, you're also going to see structured behaviors as well. And so there is a high correlation between the behaviors of a program, of the kiddos in the program, and also how the program is structured as well. Okay, so keep in mind energy and behavior, and also with the routines that you all set to.
I love it. Thank you so much, Antonio. Such a great point. Because what I have seen in some programs, especially like, and I've seen this, they do this with kindergartners. Soon as after school start, it's snack, then homework help. I'm like, if you don't let these babies go run around, right? Like they want to get up, they want to move. So thank you for, bringing that up. And also, like you said, considering how, like the time on task and thinking about the age group, be realistic. Someone was expecting a 5-year-old to sit for an hour and do homework. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen, right? So just keeping those things in mind as well. All right, so we talk about establishing routines, defining the goals or objectives. Basically, like have a purpose. What's the focus? Something that you can keep manageable, right? Aaron says, I see different youth every day. I have 2 programs a week. There are regular attendees at both, but different groups of people. The only daily routine or ritual of consistency I can offer is to give a fist bump, ask how they're doing, and give them some undivided attention. That is a routine. That is a structure, right? Giving yourself, giving attention. I love the fist bumps. Like I love any type of personalized greeting, right? Those individualized welcomes, anything like that is super, super important because that is also a routine. That is something young people can look forward to. Thank you for that, Aaron. So we got define goals and objectives and create a space that works, safe and free of hazards, comfortable and flexible. So Rachel had brought up there, like, right, I have a small space, but we learn how to work within the space. So no book bags on the floor because that can be a hazard. Making sure you're setting your space up to do whatever activities need to be done. So if you're in a classroom and you're moving around a lot, move the tables out of the way because you don't want anybody to trip over tables or chairs trying to move around and participate in the game because then that is a safety hazard. And then consistently reinforce that structure as well. So making sure that you are just consistent with how you're going to be scheduling your day or talking with your staff to say these things are important. I see Aaron just typed a cleanup routine will definitely help with my anxiety at the end of the day. So, Aaron's like, listen, we need to clean up. That's important, not only for me, for the program, for everybody. So whatever that is communicating to your young people, communicating to your staff, your coworkers. This is how we're going to structure this because it's important, not only to the flow of the program, but also to our young people so that they know exactly what to expect. I am like a person who follows the schedule. Even if I go to a meeting, if I go to a training, if you tell me that lunch is at 12. Siobhan is watching the clock at 11:58. I am expecting you to be wrapping this up because that's what I'm expecting at 12. And if you're telling me to be back at 1 o'clock, at 12:59, I'm rushing, right? Like I am that person who kind of sticks to the schedule. I'm also that person who loves to be able to see. So when I do my in-person workshops, I usually keep a copy of the agenda on the wall, like somewhere written for people to be able to visually see. Because to me, that's also a part of building a routine. There are some people who are visual learners who need to be able to check back to say, wait, which part of this are we on right now? So I like to have those visuals as a way to build structure and create routine as well. So we talked about the structure. Now let's talk about establishing some clear limits. So we want to set clear, positive guidelines, right? Context specific, get the youth input. I love calling these agreements, basically, right? And we're talking about, set clear, positive guidelines. I love for saying, hey, we're all gonna, like, what are we all gonna agree to contribute during our program? How are we all going to agree to treat one another during our program? Now, I used to go into space and be like, you all, these are the rules. This is what we doing. No this, no that, no this. And guess what? A lot of the time they did not abide by those rules. Why? Because they didn't really have the buy-in. So I learned to switch it and say, hey, let's create this together. So I actually make a routine and an activity out of setting the guidelines. And I have found it really interesting because when you get your young people's input about how they want to be treated, or even how they want to structure the day, what's really important to them, now you're creating a program that they want, because the program is for them. So they want to participate. They now have ownership as well. So we say get the youth input. I mean, like, for real, ask them, what do you want? You know, how would you like to structure the day? Like, even asking, do you want snack first? Do you want snack last? Like, what works best for you all? Do you want to do homework help here? Do we want to do homework help here? You know, just getting their input. I'm not saying that everything that they tell you you're going to implement, but at least they had an opportunity to give that input. Antonio writes, a good strategy for group agreements is to ask how youth want to feel when they, or what they want to accomplish during their time and program, then use their responses to build the agreements. They're accountable because, yeah, they helped create them. Absolutely. And I used to always just get a piece of white paper and write them. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, write them and even ask them about how they want to resolve conflicts. How would we want to resolve conflicts? How can we agree to speak to one another? How can we agree that, you know, if you're having not a great day, or if someone has done something to you. So one example I used to use with my youth, right, is just like, hey, if something has happened, because we don't have eyes everywhere as much as we wish we could, but if something has occurred and it has shifted your energy, and maybe, you know, you are offended, now you are mad, or whatever, you know, the adjective is, and you want to let us know, it's literally just, if you sit there and you put your hands up like this, that's going to be indicative of like, okay, we need to take a pause right quick. Let me do a quick check-in. And so all the youth can agree when something is wrong, my hands up. And they knew, oh, okay, Miss Siobhan, right? Antonio has his hands up. So that would let me know to do a check. So, you know, just being able to have those discussions and to set those things. Ken says, I totally agree with Antonio, and then follow up with them to keep them accountable and responsible. Tish, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm still in my car, but I'm definitely engaged. I just wanted to share how that worked for us. So at the Bay Center, we did our first summer camp, didn't know what we were doing. And so halfway through the camp, like, it was a failure. And so we actually sat down and we surveyed each girl individually and asked what would they do to change the program. The second half of our camp, after we implemented everything they said, was outstanding. The kids are begging, like, when are we doing summer camp? Are we having a spring workshop? And I mean, their input changed the face of what our camp's going to look like across the board. And these were teenagers. They asked for nap times in the morning. They needed another nap in the afternoon. They wanted to do more community service activities. Like, they had some really good things that is the core now of what our summer camp's going to look like. But if as an adult, you think you know it all and you don't ask the kids who are in it, it makes it very hard to have a successful program. So what you're saying is 100% true.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I love that you said your young people said morning nap time. That is so real, because these do be tired.
They were like, Miss Fish, you're doing too much in the morning. Can we just come in here and get a break before we get started?
Oh, I love that. And thank you for saying, hey, we listened to them. And because we pivoted, the second half of our program, they were bought into it. It was what they wanted. So they were fully engaged, and then asking you all, when are we doing this again? That is amazing. Listen, I need to start telling some folks I need a morning nap time as well. I love that. And thank you for highlighting listening to our young people. So that's a great example of really just getting the feedback. Antonio types, and this is so true, adultism is kryptonite to youth work. Absolutely. I do a training. It's called adultism. It's about adultism and just like cultural differences, and us just putting on that hat of really meeting the needs of the youth, and how our adultist views come into play again. Sometimes it is unconsciously, right? Is we're leading from an adultist lens and not really from like a youth-based lens. So thank you so much, Tish. That was a really great example of, you know, getting their feedback. I love that. So setting those positive guidelines, getting their input, use your rules to meet the needs of the youth, right? How can we create physical safety? How can we create emotional safety? Again, how are we going to speak to one another? What is the language we can agree to use? What's the language we will agree we will not use? How are we going to create a safe space for people to feel like they can communicate? One example I heard from a different program I did this with, they said that they try to make space to really allow youth to say how they feel. They put a little like a little box on their desk of like, what are some things you want to communicate to me? What do you want for me to know? And that teacher says, like, that teacher has a specific time where that teacher goes into the box and will then go and follow up with that young person, like carves out time to say, hey, I saw that you put in the box, you know, you wanted me to know this. Let's talk about it. Let's make the space for it. And I love that idea. I was just like, that's really cool. Carving out a safe space and a way, right? An actual routine of how you can create the emotional safety for the young people and make sure that you're following up on them, and really, you know, give them a space to talk, to share. Antonio says rules reflect the values of your program. I love this. Have high expectations for behavior. It says you get what you expect and communicate. One thing I always hold true is that I'm never going to expect something from someone I didn't communicate to them. For me as an adult, that is the biggest pet peeve. I can't stand for somebody to hold my feet to the fire of something you never communicated to me. So I definitely try to give young people that same respect to say, I'm not going to expect something from you that I did not communicate to you, right? And when we talk about setting those high expectations, I will say, set high expectations at the level of which you can meet your youth. That's going to look different for young people across the board. I'm just going to be honest. High expectations for Johnny may not be the same high expectations for Susie, because they are two different individuals and they, you know, they might be at different levels. So I always tell people, you know, set those expectations, but also make sure you're still meeting our young people more on their level. We don't want to set unrealistic expectations. And then communicate limits consistently, right? I think when I talk about establishing clear limits, one thing I always like to kind of start off, I love working with teens, with young teen girls. And I do like to set high expectations for them. While I always try to meet them where they are, I do create guidelines around the language that we're going to use, right? I say, like, can we agree that we will not call each other a B word? Because that word flies among, hey, you know, so it's just like when they come into programming, like, let's norm on an agreement. Can we agree that while we are in this space, right, we will not address each other as that? Now, what you do outside of this space on you. But I do try to get them to norm on, like, because I want to set, like, hey, I do want to set the expectation and the guideline for how we're going to show that we respect each other in this space. So I do set that. And again, I always kind of test the waters with my young people. But when I do that, they start to respect that. And if they step outside of it, then they start calling each other out to be like, Miss Siobhan said, remember, not in this space. They start to hold each other responsible. So feel free to set those high expectations at the level that's appropriate for them and communicate those. Because the more you hold them accountable, they will hold themselves accountable as well. Now, if you're not consistent, if you let one person slide, but then call out the other person, that's when you break the trust. So when we say you have to be consistent in how you reinforce them, you got to do it across the board. Because if you let one person get away with it, now they're gonna be like, you playing favoritism. No, I saw you let Johnny do it 2 days ago, and now I'm, you know, and that definitely breaks the trust. The partnership is damaged then.
Yeah, they definitely will hold you accountable. They definitely will call you straight out on it.
Yeah, they will. And they'll tell everybody else too. They'll be like, Miss Kenya is not fair, y'all. She, you know, and you like, hold on, slow. Wait a minute, let's have a discussion. And so I love how young people call us out. It does, Antonio. It does only take that one. And that one sometime will be loud about it. But I do love this, because we do make mistakes as adults. And I think it's also, I've learned that it has been a teachable moment for me to apologize. Anybody apologize to their young people? You find yourself like, apologizing to them? I do always ask that question because some people be like, I ain't apologizing to these kids. No, I apologize when I'm wrong or when they have felt that I have wronged them. I have found it to be very important to say, you know what? You called me out. You were right. I definitely, did not hold up my agreement. So let me take a step back and apologize for that. So I love it. All right, so we're not going to think, pair, share, because we're going to do a different group exercise in a second, but I'd love to get your feedback on this right here. Youth typically do things to get their needs met, not just to make our lives difficult, right? So that is a thought. And I'd love to hear your experience. When have you found this idea to be true? That youth typically do things to get their needs met, not just to make our lives difficult. Anyone want to share a moment when they have found this to be true? Antonio says, yes, behind every behavior, there is a need.
I have a student who her dad recently passed away, and her mom is not really involved in her life. And when she feels like she needs attention, she screams a lot. She'll just scream. And it's not like angry scream. It's like, look at me scream. And so at first it just like really annoyed me, because also some of the other kids would be like, what's up with her? Like, she's crazy. And so like I started realizing though that like what she was really just needing was some attention. And so she would just like scream until she got it. But it seemed like it ended up being better if I just like went up to her and was like, hey, like, are you needing some attention? Like, do you want to talk about something, or do you need a hug or something like that? And then she would always like calm right down. And she did need attention, she just didn't get that. And so she trying to teach her like, next time you can just ask me and I'm happy to give you some attention. And she has gotten better. So. Oh, you're muted, Siobhan.
I was muted. All right. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your transparency to say, like, I used to get annoyed, right? Because that's real. You're like, what in the world are you doing? And thank you for saying, hey, I took a step back to say, wait a minute. Let me find out a little bit more about what could be going on here. And come to find out, then there's a whole story that exists. And absolutely. Type into the chat, anyone know Maslow's hierarchy? Maslow's, yes. I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's theory of motivation, because to me, it's just so true. When we talk about having to get needs met, right? There are different behaviors that young people are showing us all the time because there is a need that has to be met, right? And so we know, according to Maslow's hierarchy, it's that if they don't feel safe, which is why we're talking about safety, if they don't feel safe, emotionally safe, physically safe, right? If those needs are not met, then I cannot expect you to be participating, right? I can't expect you to come up in here like, hey, everybody, I am here and I'm ready to go. It's like, no, you don't feel comfortable. You don't feel safe. So you might start acting out in a way or doing different things to let me know, Miss Siobhan, I'm not comfortable. And so it is important for us that's why relationship building is so important in this work that we do, because when you have that relationship built, it's easier to notice the differences. Like Rachel said, well, I noticed that this student was screaming and, acting out. Now we're working on it. So I've seen some level of progress and can speak to that. And that can let me know if what I've been doing has been working. Do I need to step it up? Do I need to pivot? So just seeing some of those changes in our young people to say, you started out this way, now you're here. Even to say, like, usually you come in here having a great day. Well, today you didn't seem so much to be having a great day. So let me figure out what's going on. I always ask the question, what is it that you need from me? right? Help me understand, what is it that you need from me? Y'all, I have a 1-year-old, and I say this to him constantly. He is, throwing his tantrums, and I have to check myself, and I take a deep breath, because I remind myself, you're communicating something to me. So I ask him, hey, buddy, what is it that you need from me right now? And I try to get into a better habit of just asking, what is it that you need from me? How can I better support you in this moment? Right? Really keeping it focused, because focus on our youth, because they're trying to communicate something. Right. So we know that when we see these behaviors, Antonio stated it here, behind every behavior, right, there is some type of a need. It's just up for us to, number one, ask the questions. We have to start asking these open-ended questions and giving them an opportunity to share with us. And then we have to be more attentive. And I'd love to hear from you all too. I know, I think Meg spoke on it earlier about, right, seeing the change in energy levels in her theater program. What other changes, maybe, like, have you all seen in energy levels, or even have you seen a change in what your youth are needing from you, of how people were behaving pre-pandemic versus like now we're in this pandemic? Have you noticed like things are changing, their needs are starting to be different now?
This is like kind of like a small thing, but once we started paying attention to it makes a big difference. We used to have snack at our class, and now we like send them home with snack, and we encourage them to just like eat a quick snack right when they get home, and then they come over to they like walk over to our place. But a lot of times they're getting off the bus late, so let's just come straight over. And if they haven't had that snack, sometimes the kids will just like be super out of whack and like be acting up or be grumpy, and it's just because they're hungry. And it's hard with COVID though, because it's like, well, we can't just like all sit here and eat together. So we've been trying to figure out strategies. Like I said, we don't have a big space, so we're like, well, let's, if it's nice weather, we can eat outside. But that's been tricky with COVID for sure.
Thank you for sharing. That is a good point. Thinking about how COVID is impacting how we deliver snack, right? Like that's actually a really good, how we're used to everybody come in, get your snack, eat, whatever. Now it's just like, whoa, don't take that mask off. One person have their mask off, right? Like we do have to take into these considerations. So thank you. And you're saying, hey, like we send them home with a snack, just adjusting, right? We're trying to adjust, meet their needs, but also knowing the times that we're in and still trying to follow these rules as well. Go right ahead.
So something I've noticed, and I didn't know these kids before the pandemic. I've all met them, but I have noticed some trends for like different age groups. It seems like the younger high schoolers, like some days really want to, like, they're really excited for that conversation, just to have any conversation with an adult or like with other youth their age. Some of the older high schoolers are like a little too cool at the moment. Like they got better things to do than deal with the library guy, but for that, like 10 to 12 age group, man, they are having a hard time. And they don't even have to express it. You can just tell. A lot of the kids that come into the teen outpost right now are coming with counseling associates from different agencies in the city. And, I can deduce that they probably have some type of referral from school because some incident has happened, and some of their behavior, demeanor kind of fits with that assumption. And, but most of them, like the behavior that is probably problematic is just that they don't know how to interact with people. Like like, not that they're doing it badly, they just don't know how to do it. And like, even as simple as making eye contact when someone, like when I address them, you know, they come into the outpost and I try to say hi to everybody and see what their needs are and address them. And some of those kids, it's like, hey, how's it going? What's your name? And like, they're like standing behind the adult and they're looking away and doing stuff you would typically associate with like a younger child, like a 5 to 7 year old maybe, or even younger. And so we do a lot of like just modeling, like, oh, you know, like, don't you know to look at somebody when you're having a conversation, like, and saying it with a smile and stuff like that, so you aren't shaming them. And but yeah, that social interaction is definitely needed.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I have been wondering about the developmental impact that this, you know, pandemic is going to have on our young people when you think about the social interaction aspect of it, right? There are a lot of kids who are not in daycare, they're home, right? Or kids who the only norm for them as far as their school experience has been virtual or hybrid, right? Or maybe some in person. I saw a chart where it was just like, you know, if your child is in this grade, this was their last like normal school experience. And for my daughter's a senior, and it was just like, so that meant her last normal school year was ninth grade. I was just like, wow. And it was just like second graders, like never, first graders, never, kindergartners, like, right. All they have known is this pandemic. So I have been wondering, like, what are the impacts going to be developmentally when we
Yeah,
think
so
about
sixth graders were third or fourth graders.
exactly.
Yeah, that puts it into perspective for sure.
Yeah, exactly. When you're thinking about like, man, like they're behaving kind of like you said, like a 6-year-old would, or so it does make sense, because for them, their last normal school year was somewhere in elementary school, almost 3 years, you know. So that's interesting. I've been wondering kind of how, you know, psychologists are going to be able to track the growth, you know, these milestones of our young people, because things are different. So they're behaving differently, right? Their behavior is showing us that there are different needs. So, you know, like you said, even remembering to be like, oh, don't you know to look someone in the eye when you're, you know, you're talking, and to have eye contact, and it's just like, oh, well, maybe they probably don't. Maybe
Yeah,
that's been the norm for them. So taking the opportunity to teach them, like, oh, like, right, when I think about shaking hands, I feel like, man, like, is that something of the past? Because people don't really shake hands anymore.
right.
It's like, wait a minute, hold on, let me get some hand sanitizer, or it's like elbow bump, right? That's a societal norm that isn't so normal anymore, where it's just like, shake this person's hand. Now it's like, don't touch anybody's hands, you know, or if you touch, hurry up, wash your hands. So it's just all of these things. I'm
It's
curious.
the fist bump is a good alternative.
A good fist bump, right? So
Yeah.
finding different ways to, like you said, still give our young people that social interaction or whatever it is that they're needing in this COVID safe environment. So this is great. Very, very interesting.
I mean, just that actual physical contact of just this or the handshake, like that is there's brain science happening, you know, that's makes you feel good. So
Yeah, thank you. Kenya, go ahead.
Now I just want to kind of like reiterate, because you all said a lot, and I have these conversations like daily, not only between the youth but the adults too, and adults that's in profession, as far as like psychologists and therapists, because I've been on other platforms in meeting with other therapists, and we have discussions where we're trying to, well, we're strategizing on how to accommodate our clients, right? And whether it's an adult or youth, I always like be the icebreaker, I guess, or break the code, because first we got to deal with our own depression, and not being around others and how the pandemic has affected us. We can't try to assist. I strongly believe anyway, personally, you can't help no one unless you can help yourself. And if you can't be honest about where you are, then how can you help someone else? Because the youth are, they're depressed. They are. And we cannot be in denial moving forward because they haven't had any social interaction. They haven't been able to obtain to do things that makes them
Right.
being a youth slash adolescent. The human needs to have interaction to embrace one another, period. And, and then it's wintertime again, right? So you're in the house, but they've been in the house all year round. And then school's not normal anymore because they have to wear these masks, which causes attitudes and behavior, and they act out because they get tired of wearing the mask all the time. So it's just like life for them as they once knew it has changed. As for us too, is we're learning things and trying to enforce new rules and regulations. I mean, it's really a difficult time in life, period. You got to take your time on the approaches that you implement. And I guess be open to what you said recently, Siobhan, about apologizing and be open to doing a lot of that as you go on as a form of empathy and discussing why. Because they're intelligent enough. They really are. They and if they don't, they will understand, and it's making them feel comfortable and and they daily explaining. But as far as like when you were speaking on the psychologist level, I have been amazed. I guess that's another conversation. I'll leave that right there. Of not addressing where you are and how the pandemic, not only the pandemic, because it's a lot of things that's gone on in Louisville, Kentucky too over the past 3 years, because we've been affected another type of way, but that's neither here or there anyhow. But yeah, I just like the points that you hit on and being open with the youth. Because if they find you everywhere they can catch you slipping, they're gonna hold that against you.
Oh, absolutely.
They're gonna speak on it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, your perspective and your input. And I see Antonio, you're talking about mental health, right? For us, which is such a valid point. We got to check ourselves too and make sure that we're okay as well. Antonio typed into the chat, self-care is vital. You all have access to mental health services through BLOCS for free. So that is just a good note there, that there are some free mental health services available to you all as well. Thank you. This is like really vital information as we're talking about creating some type of structure, right? Because like you said, the structure that we once knew is out the door. So now we're having to create what new structure, what new routine can look like and how to make these adjustments. And we're constantly pivoting because I feel like every week there's a mask mandate, not a mask mandate. They're telling you these many people can be in a space. Nope, just kidding. Now you can have these many people. Psych, that was a lie. Go back to these, right? So we're constantly adjusting and having to pivot on a dime in this new space. So that is already disrupting any type of routine we thought we had down pat in the first place. So just like you said, stay open and normalizing, apologizing to our young people. Like, you know what? You are right. I did say that we were going to do it like this, and I have to change it up. I apologize. I'm sure that makes you uncomfortable or frustrated, and that's valid, right? So this is really amazing discussion here, as you can see on my screen, similar to Maslow's hierarchy here, right? We talk about our youth needs. So when we think about physical safety, right, what are some considerations? Making sure they have healthy food and drink, right? Have shelter and warmth. So when we think about our spaces, like are our spaces physically safe for our young people? Is it warm enough? Is it cool enough? Like that matters. And if you've ever done the PQA assessment, if you've ever done that tool, there is actually a section on there that talks about like how the room feels. Do you see any students that are like shivering cold? Are there any signs that you can see where that will indicate to you someone's too hot, someone is too cold? Because that matters, right? That means, again, we have to pay attention to the needs. I am a person where like if I go into a new space, I always have my coat on. It is cold in so many spaces, so I'm usually like bundled up, a scarf on, like gloves on, because I'm like, oh, it's cold in this room. So just keeping in mind the temperature in the space. I used to manage a building, and we had 3 gyms, and one of the gyms had carpet in the gym. Like, why would you have a gym that has carpet in it? Beyond me. What you gonna do in a carpet gym, right? But anyways, that building was built a long time ago and they had carpet in the gym. But that gym, one summer, our HVAC was just acting really wonky. And it's like half the building was cool, half the building was hot. And I remember staff texting me frantically, and they were just like, Miss Siobhan, it is so hot in this gym. They took a picture of the thermostat, you all. It was 86 degrees in the gym. Kids were having nosebleeds. I was just like, get everybody out of the gym. Shut the gym down. So we literally had to like shift everyone to only one side of the building, because it's like, no, I'm not going to take our kids into spaces that are too hot. Because what happens if you have a young person in a space where the temperature is just not comfortable? King had talked about attitudes for the mask earlier. Like, whoo, you gonna see them kids acting a fool. It's too hot, it's too cold. And then who else you got to deal with? Somebody's mama now, right? Then you got to deal with the parents, rightfully so, coming in there like, wait a minute, they done told me, y'all, it's 95 degrees in this building. So I do tell people, definitely pay attention to how it feels in a space, right? Making sure the temperature is right. Looking for those signs. Food. Can you provide food? Does your program provide any type of food? That also matters. Antonio says, hangry youth are no fun. Man, neither are hangry adults, right? So making sure that there is access to like some type of water. I know when we did summer camp, anytime we would go outside, we had to take the coolers of water and the cups, because we needed to make sure water was always accessible. So just figuring out a way to make sure that you have those things accessible. Safety, right? Emotionally safe, physically safe. I won't get beat up. I won't lose the good things I have. It's safe for me to be myself. That's important. Do they feel safe to be themselves? I'm not afraid someone's going to talk about me, because I know if they talk about me, Miss Kenya going to shut that down. Miss Kenya will not allow that type of, bullying to go on in this space. Making sure that we're paying it. Again, that goes back to like setting the tone, setting the guidelines, because we want our young people to feel physically safe. I love this one right here, belonging. Right? Do everyone, I know he talked about the, what was it? Fist bump or handshakes, right? Like seeing them. Kenya talked about even any physical connection, like having that physical connection, fist bump, handshake, a song that we do, a saying, that sense of belonging. Putting people in small groups, partnering them up so people don't have to be like, oh, I don't have anybody to play with. I don't have anybody to work with, right? Creating that sense of community, because a sense of belonging is vital. And then esteem, building up our young people's self-esteem. I'm smart. I can get grades. I have skills. I will go far in life. I have control over situations, right, that I can control. So making sure that we're building up their esteem. So that's constantly telling them how amazing, right, they are, giving them that encouragement. I also do a training session where we talk about the difference between praise versus encouragement, right? And we always want to see the encouragement, not just the praise, because when we have too much that's just praise, that means our young people are always seeking validation. Encouragement means I actually want you to tell me what's so amazing about you. wow, I saw the picture you drew. Tell me, what made you choose those colors? Right? Asking them those questions so that they can really brag on themselves. Antonio says, this is the key for equity. Every youth has different needs. Absolutely. We have to have strategies and need to assess and meet their needs and not group everyone to one group. Aaron says, addressing a person when they enter a space. Yes. Saying their name, physical touch, fist bump goes so far. It's the penny in the cup concept. Absolutely true. And again,
do y'all know the penny in the cup concept?
I don't, but feel free to address it. Let us know what that means.
Okay, so at the library, you know, we got to enforce rules. And this training actually came from like working with individuals experiencing homelessness because, you know, they're kind of like youth. People are always ready to like correct their behavior and single them out and stuff like that. So the penny in the cup concept is that every time you have a positive interaction with a person, you put a penny in the cup. Every time you have a negative interaction where basically you're enforcing the rules or you're correcting behavior, that's a nickel out of the cup. So you know, you're trying to basically build up, you're investing in your relationship with this individual so that when you do have to ask them, hey, can you be quiet? Or, hey, you know, can you not touch that person that way? It makes them feel unsafe. That, you know, you've already done a little bit to prepare for that, and it won't bring them to a negative, to a deficit.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love that, right? I absolutely love, you know, thinking about that, putting in and taking away, because something similar to the concept that I've learned is that it takes 7 positive comments just to undo 1 negative comment. Right. And it's just like, wow. So one negative comment, it has such a big impact that in order to negate that, I have to go back now for every negative thing. I have to give you 7 positive things. So I love that concept, us just, you know, building up their self-esteem. That is amazing. So we're going to take a shift right now. You all are going to get into breakout groups. So we're going to have 3 different breakout sessions, and each breakout session is going to focus on a different station here. So if you are in breakout room number 1, you all are going to be working on how to establish a routine. So I'm going to stop share here because I just want to show you all before I send you to it. And I was going to have you all rotate, but I'm looking at the time now because we've had such great discussion. I will just have you all work in this, your 1 breakout session, and then we will chat about it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. And if you are in breakout session number 1, you and your breakout group are going to come into this Google document, and you all are basically going to talk about like how you establish routines. You can say, this is how we do it in my program. And I want you to put the time, like what part of your routine, and any notes that you would need. And when you think about notes, I want you to think about supplies, right? Any supplies we'd have to prep, any, you know, physical space things we need to know, any notes about that part of the routine, because at the end of this, when you all are done, I want you all to basically have your routine for the day, whatever portion of your program. I want you all to kind of have that set out, and you're going to present that to our group. So that is group number 1. Group number 2, we're going to talk about objectives and goals for your program. So if you're in breakout session number 2, you all are going to come to this Google Doc, and you all are going to say, okay, well, let's talk about a program. Here is the overall goal, and here are 3 main objectives for meeting that overall goal. This is just giving us some practice in making sure that, you know, we know how to lay these things out, because this is super imperative to how we plan our programs, you know, in our respective organizations. So any type of program, any type of goal, and then you're going to lay out 3 objectives for how you're going to achieve that goal in your program. Then you all will present that to us. And then the 3rd group, breakout session number 3, you all are going to talk about setting the rules. So you all are going to set some rules yourself. You're going to create a rule, and then you're going to talk about, well, what youth need does this rule meet, right? And then I want you to have a little discussion down here around What's a part of your program that you feel could use a set of guidelines? How could you positively frame those guidelines? I want you to, write down some exact language. And then how and when will you communicate these guidelines to the youth? So I want you all in session 3, I want you all to have a discussion about what this looks like in your own program. And then we will come back together and we are going to share out there. So let me stop share so I can see you all. You all are going to have about 7 minutes in your program. Yes, these slides will be available after the training. I will email this to Antonio. He will email this out for you. So do me a favor, give me a thumbs up if you all are clear on what we're about to do next in your sessions. So we're gonna have 3 different sessions, breakout group number 1, number 2, and number 3. What I'm going to do, as soon as you are in the group, I'm actually gonna hop into your group and I'm going to drop your specific link to your Google Doc. It's hard to kind of drop them all now. So I will hop in, I will drop it, and you'll have 7 minutes. All right, Antonio, you can go ahead and pop them in. All righty, just giving everyone an opportunity to get back to us.
Being recorded.
All right. So no, it wasn't like a whole bunch of time, right? Just kind of wanted to get you all started with this activity. I would say feel free to continue something similar to this in your own practices, like with your own teams, because I feel like this type of planning just kind of makes sense because it really gets you to really think out, some of these things so we can start to pivot our routines or pivot our goals and objectives or even pivot some of the rules or agreements. I am going to share my screen and just briefly allow you all to just walk us through what you started. Don't worry about if you didn't finish, but just kind of like what was your thought process and as you all were doing it. So we have group number 1 talking about establishing routine. So anyone, whoever the speaker was for group number 1, share with us your thought process.
Meg, do you want to take point? All right, I can. So we talked a little bit about just kind of the difference in our types of programs. Meg said that, snacks are very important. And if you don't provide snacks, set it up so that the youth can bring their own snacks. We're not doing snacks right now because of COVID. We're just not. I'm sorry, but we're a library, so like food is kind of a contentious thing in general. But yeah, we're not doing snacks. Once COVID's over, we will. And then Meg said it's important to get out the energy, and then I think like probably a structured activity, and then having some type of cleanup routine. And then prior to opening, just like setting the space up for programs and being prepared for whatever you're doing that day.
Yes, thank you, group 1. And I love this concept because this is so important to make sure that you are using your time wisely and you have a better flow in program. Now, when I first started stepping into training, I remember being like, I'm gonna put my little agenda together and I'm gonna boom, I got it. And then I went and participated in like a higher level training on the art of facilitation. And we even related it to our youth programs, and they made us sit down and we had to schedule out everything that we did. We had to schedule out exactly setting the space up. Every transition had to be like, if you were working in groups, what was your group former going to be? How much time did they have to work in groups? How were you going to transition them back? Like we literally had to set all of those things out. And I noticed the difference between doing it that way, where everything was kind of mapped out, versus the way that I have been doing it. And my program flow was, my session flow was way better, because then it made more sense to me and I felt more prepared. And I also knew how to set, participants up for what to expect next. So I love this, thinking about prior to opening snacks, setting aside a time to get the energy out, writing down what the activity, carving out the cleanup time. Awesome. Thank you so much, group number 1. All right, so group number 2, you all had objectives and goals for your program. Go ahead and take about a minute and let us know your thought process.
Well, we just kind of talked initially about our different programs, and we all seem to have like pretty different programs. So we each kind of just worked on our own, like picked out one of our programs and tried to kind of spell it out. But we worked a little bit more independently on this spreadsheet.
I am looking at these. Look at this. Awesome. Arts and music education. Learn transferable skill sets in audio and video production, right? Like, wow. I wouldn't even thought about something like that. So tying in those objectives to even teaching students how to do AV. Students learn songwriting, how to create and publish creative content. Life skills program. Look, teaching them just those general life skills. Teach them how to cook, right? Teaching social skills, allow time for relationships to develop. Feminist fashion class. Wow. Create a feminist fashion line to display at the fashion show. Oh, sign me up for that class. I want to learn some feminist fashion as well. So teaching entrepreneurial skills, how to manage, how to budget, how to market, learning about feminism, creating definitions. So I love this. I mean, this is it. If you all ever have staff where you're like, hey, I want you to create a program, this is a really great tool to be able to allow them to think through and really map out some of the key points in the program so that they know how to design and how to create the program session flow. Awesome. Thank you, group number 2. All right, group number 3, setting the rules. Go ahead and take about a minute and let us know your thought process for this.
Well, we had a discussion a little bit about how probably this would be an activity we would do with the youth, as per guidance and suggestions. So I really wanted to say thanks to Antonio for sharing the thing in the chat earlier about, asking them how do they want to feel and what are their goals for their time when they're here, and then using that as a jumping off point to hear their voices in terms of like, what kind of norms do you want to create for our space together? Tish really like fleshed out, especially the second one, the confidentiality rule, and talked about how, I don't know, Tish, I know you're driving, but do you want to talk about how that you talked about that in your program?
Yeah, so we always just say what's said here stays here. This is your safe space, your safe zone. They have to agree to confidentiality, and when they come in, they feel comfortable knowing they can be who they are unapologetically because there is no judgment, and what they say here stays here. So just having that confidentiality agreement for youth that they're a part of creating is really important.
Antonio says that's the Las Vegas philosophy, right? But I love that. And that's a great way to create that safe space, and create that emotional safety because they know, you're not going to go and run and tell my business if I shared it here. So I love that. And I think that is really important to share with our young people. So thank you all for I'm going to stop share there. Thank you all for sharing with us, some of your thought processes and even how this might look in your program. All right, it is 11:59. As always, I love to honor people and, time and all of that. So I am just going to ask us to do a quick reflection here, and I will share my screen for the reflection question. I just want to know, how do you feel about this content? We talked about structure and clear limits, right? Are you comfortable? Are you saying, hey, I feel comfortable? Are you saying I'm still learning, or are you overwhelmed? So we'll do this, and we'll do this a 5, we'll type a 3, and a 1. So we'll stick with our 1, 3, and 5. Go ahead and type into the chat. Let me know, how are you feeling about this? Are you a 1? Are you a 3? Or are you a 5? Right? So are you a little overwhelmed by this? Are you still learning about this? Or are you like, I'm comfortable and I'm ready to pop in and implement? All right, so I see some numbers coming in here. I see some 5s, I see some 4s, I see some 3s. Awesome. This is really great. So thank you all for your effort, your energy, for participating. This has been really great discussion here. I've learned a lot. I hope you all have learned a lot as well. Someone says like excited, but also overwhelmed. And that's fair to say this is a lot of information. And so sit with it, right? Honor your processing time. Figure out what's relevant to you. Figure out what tools and tips you want to take and implement, right? To say, hey, I like certain aspects, but I need a little bit of time to sit with this so I can figure out the best way to implement this as well. All right, so Antonio, can you go ahead and pop that link? There is a link for feedback, right? Antonio says United Way wants to know what you think about the workshop. What would you want to see? So there it is, a SurveyMonkey link. Feel free to drop that there. And then Antonio says, feel free to reach out to plan and strategize around structure and clear limits. So that is amazing. He dropped his email address. So thank you so much for your time, effort, and energy. Antonio, I will hand it off to you to close it out.
Awesome. As always, thank you so much, Siobhan. This was fantastic. I love the discussion. I love the planning. I love all the idea generation. And most of all, I really love to hear about all of the lived experiences that you all are having in other, organizations, and youth workers got to see, hey, I'm not in this alone. We need a little bit more structure and then bouncing ideas off of each other. This is really what it's about. When we come together and we convene, we make each other better, and we are better together, as a collective unit. So yeah, just fill out that survey. Please just let us know what you think. Like I said, we do have that listening campaign results for the 17th. And so please register for that. That will be, helpful for your program, just to hear about, what the city has said they want in regards to after school and out of school time programming. So it'll help inform your work going forward. And I won't keep you any longer. That is it. Please have a great rest of your day. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you all need anything. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Siobhan. Have a great day.
Nice to see you, everybody. Thank you very much, Siobhan. Bye.